So yeah, I really did get married, the ceremony, the honeymoon, and the reception for less than $300, and here's how I did it. So big fat disclaimer before I start this video. So if you're getting married or whatever, it's your wedding. So your choice. Don't feel like you have to do what your family tells you to do. Don't feel like you have to do what Pinterest is telling you to do, or don't feel like you have to do what your friends did. Don't feel like you have to have a budget wedding. Don't feel like you have to have an expensive wedding. The very first important thing to look at if you're getting married and you're thinking, how am I going to save some money? Look inward first. Look at who you are, look at who your partner is, and see what works out best for you in terms of where you're going to cut money out of your wedding. Point being, this cheap wedding ceremony, reception, honeymoon that I'm going to lay out for you guys is not the absolute cheapest that it could be. So don't be in the comments being like, you could have saved money this way, didn't it? I know, I'm aware, okay? I'm just telling you what I did, what we did, based off of our wants and needs. And so our venue was a public park. And when I say park, it's at the seaside. So the ocean was right there, and it was really pretty. For the person marrying us, we're lucky enough to have a good friend who is actually a minister. So that was easy. Our friend just came up and married us. So for the attire, this is an area where the bride, the groom, the wedding party can really spend a lot of money. I spent $13 total on all of our attire, and that was basically my dress, and I got it at a thrift store, and it was just a summer dress that I thought was really pretty. It was not white, it was gray, but I got it so that I could wear it again, like normally as a dress. Like a wedding dress you can only really wear on your wedding day, like the traditional white poofy kind, but if it's just a dress, like you can wear it any other day in the future. And then my groom wore clothes that he already had. The photographer and the videographer were also non-existent. We just had our friends, we just told them, hey, take pictures if you feel like it. And actually we found out after the fact that two of my friends had videoed the whole thing. So we actually got video of it and some pictures. So for this category, I'm just going to talk about all the extras that we basically opted out of, the components that you'd traditionally find in a wedding ceremony that we just opted out of. One was flowers. The other thing we opted out of was rings. Neither of us has really been big on that idea. Actually, he more than I. Like he wanted to get like meteorite rings or something if we could get rings. And maybe sometime in the future we'll get rings. But like, you don't really need rings to be married. We also opted out of music, either, a live musician or musicians, or even, just a DJ on a sound system playing, walking down the aisle music or anything. We opted out of that. It was very simple. We just stood there and got married. So what's the point in having like walking down the aisle music when we're not walking down an aisle? There's no groomsmen and bridesmaids and flower girls and people walking down the aisle. So we opted out of that as well. And while we're on the subject, yeah, we opted out of just the wedding party. We opted out of the ring bearer, the flower girl, bridesmaids, groomsmen, anyone else. It was just him, me, minister. Another thing that we opted out of was formal wedding invitations. I'm going to talk about later in the video. We did have a reception, so we could have done like formal wedding invitations to that, the nice printed ones and like a double envelope, and then there's the RSVP section. Sometimes you have the save the date and then the wedding invitation. There's a lot of that. Everyone's online. We just told people online or called people and they showed up. So that makes the wedding day total for the ceremony, the actual like getting legally married and the ceremony, the whole thing only cost $86. And we couldn't have really made it that much cheaper. Like I said, like the wedding, the marriage license itself is pretty expensive. It's like $67. Most of the expense of the ceremony was just the license, giving us, the legal ability to get married. So now on to the honeymoon. So we did what I call the honeymoon at home. And that's exactly what it was. We just stayed at home for a few days, and I took we didn't work basically, and we just stayed home and watched movies together and ate food together. The only expenses that we had during this honeymoon at home was about $50 worth of like special farmer's market items. We got some wild mushrooms and we got some like really fancy goat cheese, and we made a pizza one of the nights. And we totally would not have done that otherwise. Those are like luxury food items. So I'm basically calling our honeymoon at home $50. So the reception is actually where we spent most of the money. And the reception kind of comes in two parts. So reception part one was on our actual wedding day when we got married. Right after that, we and everyone who was at that ceremony, we all just drove about a half hour to a Brazilian steakhouse and we just had a meal all there together. And that was free for me and my husband because, well, like 4 of our friends like offered to pay for us. But our reception part 2, what we did, because we live very far away from most of our friends now, what we did was we went down to where our friends are and we had a reception about 2 weeks after the wedding. So our location for our reception was free because we had it just at a friend's house. Our food and drinks, the catering, that was also free because we decided it would be a potluck. Our attire for the event, it could have been free. We could have just worn clothes we already had, but I decided that it would be a costume party. And so we did get some costumes. We went as Lone Star and Princess Vespa from Spaceballs, and nobody got who we were. And it was like, It was $26.07. Most of that was the wedding dress. But yeah, that wedding dress was like $20 before tax. So if you're getting married and you want like the traditional white poofy wedding dress, don't outrule thrift stores. They actually sometimes have really good wedding dresses. So usually at a wedding reception, you have a DJ or you have some kind of entertainment. We did not. It was free. Basically, we just played games, board games, card games that our friend had and that friends brought over. We played some games on Jackbox TV like Drawful. Lots of fun, and it was free. So the wedding cake, that is where a lot of this expense came from. And again, I talked about in the beginning of the video, think about who you are, think about who your partner is, think about what you want. And the wedding cake is just, I've always wanted to make a 3-tiered cake. It's not like I've always wanted to have a wedding with a cake. Like I personally, as a baker, as an intermediate baker, I have always wanted an excuse to make a 3-tiered cake. And I finally had an excuse to make a 3-tiered cake. So I was gonna make a 3-tiered cake. So to make this cake, I did need some equipment. A lot of the equipment I already had, because again, I'm an intermediate level home baker, and a lot of the equipment I didn't already had and had to purchase special for this cake. So I did, because it was a 3-tiered cake, that means that each tier is a different size. So the bottom tier was a 10-inch cake, the second tier was an 8-inch cake, and the top tier was a 6-inch cake. I already had 6-inch cake pan and 2 8-inch cake pans, but I did not have the 10-inch cake pans. So I bought 2 10-inch cake pans for $25.81. I have been I've been really wanting a small offset spatula. They're so good for cake decorations, and oh my god, they're so much better at smoothing frosting than like a spatula or a butter knife, which is kind of what I'd been wrestling with all these years before. Don't know why I didn't already get a small offset spatula, but I got a small offset spatula for this cake, and that cost me $4.72. Equipment that I got that is pretty much exclusive to this cake, but I do have enough to make one more 3-tiered cake, is the dowels. So if you're making a 3-tiered cake, you need like thick, hollowed out dowels. Moment of truth. I have never done this before. This is how you stack a cake. And it's apparently gonna burst through and make a mess. Aha! That actually kind of works. Between your layers, because if you don't put them in there, your whole cake will just kind of sink or like fall over while it's sinking, because cakes are heavy, especially when you stack like 3 of them on top of each other. So I did have to buy the little plastic dowels that go inside. That cost $4.81. And then for this cake, I also had to buy cake rounds. And yeah, I can't reuse the cake rounds. They get all greasy and covered in cake. So this was a one-time purchase for just this cake, and the 3 cake rounds cost $1.06. So for the cake ingredients, I saved all of my receipts and I made notes on them. So I really did calculate this. And the cost of all the ingredients for all 3 cakes was $70.79. That is basically the cost of all of the money that I had to spend anew buying ingredients for the cake. Did all of the ingredients, did like 100% of all of the ingredients that I bought make it into the cakes? No. I had like a whole thing of mascarpone left over that I just gave to my friend. I had a couple sticks of butter left over that I just gave to my friend. I had most of the can of pumpkin left over that I just gave to my friend. I had most of the jar of espresso powder left over that I kept. I had like some ingredients left over that I just wound up keeping. However, I also used my friend's eggs to make the cakes. I used some of her sugar to make the cakes. So I'm just kind of splitting the difference and saying I spent $70.79. So while we're on the subject for ingredients for the wedding cake, this is a perfect opportunity for me to take you guys into Winco and show you guys the wonders of Winco. So in the other videos, I would say things like, oh, you know, a cup of flour costs about 12 cents, or oh, a tablespoon of this spice costs like 2 cents. And then the trolls in the comments are like, oh, you can't buy just a cup of flour or a tablespoon of this spice. It's like, you can though if you go to Winco, and that's exactly what I did. I went to Winco and I bought like flour that I thought that I would need for the cakes. It wound up being more flour than I needed actually, and I gave the rest to my friend. But the point is I didn't have to buy a giant bag of flour for the cakes. I could buy what I thought I needed. The sugar actually, I think it was the brown sugar, I bought exactly as much brown sugar as I needed. And exactly as many spices as I needed. And fun fact, if you buy a small enough amount of a spice at Winco so that it's like less than a cent, you get it for free. That's what happened with the ginger. I only needed 1 teaspoon of ginger for the pumpkin cake. And so I got like 1 teaspoon of ginger from their bulk section, and they wound up not charging me for it, probably because it was less than a penny, like significantly less than a penny, enough that it would be like, you know, they're just like, I'm not going to charge her for it. So the total cost of the wedding reception was $129.26. And again, most of that was the wedding cake. So the grand total for the ceremony, the honeymoon, and the reception was $269.26. And we got what we wanted. We did not go into debt, and we had a great time. Thanks for watching. I know this video wasn't as food related as most of my videos, but next Friday I will be back with another pumpkin compilation, this time for the sweet pumpkin recipes and the center cake of my 3-tiered cake, the pumpkin spice cake with vanilla frosting. That's going to be in the compilation, so stay tuned for that. Bye!